When you're alone, you're in a space that's designed for growth. Solitude is not something to fear, but something to welcome. It's a place where your purpose, your character, and your strength are refined. God often calls us to solitude not to abandon us, but to work with us without distractions. When you're alone, that's where clarity arrives, and that's where transformation begins. Here are 10 reasons why embracing being alone is essential for you and for what God is shaping you to be. When you're alone, you're finally in a place where you can meet yourself in the rawest, most authentic way. It's like taking off a mask you didn't even know you were wearing. You've got no one to impress, no one to convince, no crowd to cater to. In that solitude, there's nowhere to hide your face-to-face with yourself. And that can be uncomfortable, even intimidating, but it's also the very moment where discovery happens. It's where you uncover layers, beliefs, and dreams that were buried under the expectations of others, things you didn't even realize were holding you back. Alone, you can confront those parts of yourself you've been running from, the doubts, the insecurities, the questions. But instead of turning away, this is the time to look at them and see them for what they are: stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. Solitude forces you to dig deep, to understand what drives you and what you're truly passionate about. You start to see what you really want in life, apart from what the world thinks you should want. And that's powerful because it means you're now walking your own path, not someone else's version of it. When you take the time to know yourself, you're equipping yourself with an inner compass. You're not just moving aimlessly, you're driven by a purpose that's rooted within you. Solitude gives you that clarity. It's like quieting a storm just long enough to hear your own heartbeat, to understand the rhythm and strength that has been there all along, just waiting for you to pay attention. When you're alone, you have no one else to lean on but yourself. That's where real strength is born, in those quiet, sometimes uncomfortable moments where it's just you and the silence. Without the distractions and support systems, you start to learn what you're really made of. You find out that strength doesn't come from the people cheering you on, it comes from within, from pushing through when there's no applause, no recognition, no one telling you to keep going. Strength grows in solitude because you're faced with choices only you can make. You have to rise up, take responsibility, and find that grit inside you that doesn't back down. It's in these moments that you realize how resilient you truly are, that you can withstand more than you ever thought possible. You learn that strength isn't always loud sometimes. It's quiet, steady, even unbreakable. And when you've gone through that fire alone, you emerge with a kind of toughness that nobody can take from you. Being alone forces you to rely on yourself, to trust your own instincts, and to believe in your own capacity. You stop waiting for someone else to fix things or to make you feel strong. Instead, you start to understand that you already have everything you need inside you. Solitude strips away all the crutches, leaving you with nothing but your own willpower. And that's when you realize you've been strong all along. The strength you discover in those moments alone becomes the foundation of your character, the bedrock of who you are. You become unshakable, not because someone else gave you strength, but because you found it within yourself. When you're alone, it's not just about the quiet, it's about the space it creates for your spirit to breathe and grow. The noise of the world fades away, and in that stillness, you begin to hear what's been inside you all along. That's when your faith has room to breathe. It's in solitude that you confront the deepest questions, the rawest doubts, and the fiercest battles within yourself. And when you do, you realize that your faith isn't just about what's around you, it's about what's inside you, a foundation that doesn't rely on circumstances but is built on your relationship with something greater than yourself. In the rush of daily life, faith can feel like something you're just going through the motions with, showing up, saying the right words, doing the right things. But when it's just you, in the quiet, that's when you're forced to really examine what you believe, not because anyone's watching, but because you're staring down your own doubts and fears. Faith isn't just something you say, it's something you build, something you hold on to when everything around you is shaking. In solitude, you're not just talking to God, you're listening, you're being still enough to hear His voice, to feel His presence. This is where faith stops being a concept and becomes a living, breathing thing inside you. In the silence, you learn to trust what you can't see, to believe in something bigger than yourself, even when the world tells you otherwise. You understand that faith isn't always loud, it's a whisper in your heart, a knowing deep in your soul that carries you through. Alone, you realize that your faith can move mountains, not because of the noise or the crowds, but because of the quiet conviction inside you that won't back down, no matter the challenges. That's the power of faith when it's nurtured in solitude. It's unshakable, unmovable, and all yours. Being alone is the ultimate test of your relationship with yourself. No distractions, no noise, just you facing yourself in the mirror, and that can be a scary thing. But it's also the moment where you truly begin to accept yourself. You're not trying to meet someone else's expectations, not trying to play the role the world wants you to play. You just are. And that's where the magic happens. You start to realize that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's approval, anyone else's love, or anyone else's view of you. It's a powerful feeling to stand in your own truth without needing anyone else to tell you that you're okay. Being alone forces you to understand that you've got everything you need inside you already. You've got everything you need to be strong, to be bold, to be enough, no matter what anyone else thinks. You begin to love yourself not because of what others see in you, but because of what you see in yourself. You start to respect your own journey, your own growth, and that confidence isn't a product of being validated by others. It's a product of being comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you're enough, just as you are. When you stop running from yourself, that's when you start to experience true peace. You don't need anyone else to fill the void because you've learned to fill it yourself. And that doesn't mean you don't value relationships. It means you understand that the relationship with yourself is the foundation for all others. When you can stand alone, proud and unshaken in who you are, everything else in life becomes secondary. You don't need approval. You don't need validation. You know you're enough. And that truth gives you the power to walk through this world with your head held high. You've learned that being alone isn't about loneliness, it's about being complete, whole, and unapologetically you. When you're alone, you start to realize something powerful. You don't need the constant validation of others to feel good about yourself. Society teaches us that we're only as valuable as what others think of us. But solitude forces you to face the truth that your worth isn't based on someone else's opinion. The need for validation becomes irrelevant because in those quiet moments, you see clearly that your value is intrinsic. It's built on who you are, not on what anyone else sees or says about you. In the solitude, you stop searching for approval. You don't need the likes, the compliments, or the applause. When you learn to stand firm in your own worth, it's like you stop needing to seek outside validation to feel complete. You realize that approval from others is temporary, it's fleeting. But the self-respect and confidence you build from within are lasting. It's not easy to get to that place. We all have those moments where we want to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be loved by others. But when you're alone, you come face to face with the reality that the love and approval you're searching for need to come from you first. It's in this quiet that you realize you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Learning to embrace this truth is liberating. When you stop seeking validation, you become unstoppable. You start living your life according to your own standards, not someone else's. Your decisions are no longer based on what people might think or what others expect from you. You make them because you know what's best for you. And that's when real freedom begins. You no longer look for someone else to fill the void because you filled it yourself. You don't wait for anyone's approval to step into your greatness because you already know you've got everything inside you to make it happen. You are enough. And when you truly believe that, nothing else matters. You stop seeking validation because you found it in the most important place within yourself. Solitude gives you the space to see things clearly, to stop and listen to the whispers that are often drowned out by the noise of the world. It's in these moments of being alone that your vision sharpens and you begin to understand exactly where you're going and why. In the hustle and bustle of everyday life, it's easy to get caught up in the chaos, to follow the crowd, or to take the path that everyone else seems to be on. But when you're alone, you're forced to confront your own desires, your own path, and your own purpose. It's in that space of stillness that clarity emerges. You start to realize that your vision wasn't as blurry as you thought. It was just covered up by distractions. You had the answers within you all along. Being alone allows you to cut through the noise and see the truth about what you want and where you need to go. It's in solitude that you can really ask yourself the tough questions, the ones you might avoid when you're surrounded by people. What do you truly want? What are you willing to sacrifice to get there? Who are you becoming in the process? Those are the kinds of questions that only emerge when you have the courage to be still, to face your own reflection, and to confront your own reality. When you step into solitude, you stop looking to others for the answers. You realize that the vision you have for your life is yours and yours alone. It doesn't belong to anyone else. The clarity you gain in solitude isn't just about seeing the next step. It's about understanding the bigger picture, the purpose behind it all. It's in those moments of quiet reflection that you start to understand what God has been preparing you for, where He's been leading you all along. You stop worrying about how the world sees you or what others think of your journey. You trust in the vision you've received, and you walk with confidence, knowing it's not about finding the right path, it's about trusting yourself to walk the one that's been designed just for you. Solitude is the teacher you never knew you needed. When it's just you and the silence, you begin to see life in a different light. You realize that you've been moving so fast, chasing after things that seemed important, only to discover that true wisdom doesn't come from what you accumulate, it comes from the lessons you learn when there's no one else around to distract you. Alone, you have no choice but to reflect, to dig deeper into your own experiences, to understand the meaning behind them. It's in those moments of solitude that you connect the dots. The lessons from the past, the struggles you faced, the failures and the victories, they all start to make sense. You begin to see the patterns in your life, the ways in which you've grown, and the wisdom you've gained from the journey. This kind of wisdom isn't learned from books or from the opinions of others. It's earned through experience, through pain, through perseverance. And in solitude, you have the space to absorb it, to internalize it, and to make it part of who you are. You start to understand that wisdom isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the subtle recognition of how far you've come. It's the ability to make better decisions because you've learned from the past. It's knowing that the road ahead won't be easy, but you've been equipped with everything you need to face it. Solitude isn't just about being alone. It's about taking the time to look back, learn from your mistakes, and move forward with the knowledge that you're stronger, smarter, and better prepared for whatever comes next. You can't get that kind of wisdom by running from yourself. You only get it when you slow down, when you stop looking for answers in the world and start looking for them within. The wisdom that comes from solitude is the kind that sticks with you, the kind that shapes your decisions and influences the way you see the world. It's not just knowledge, it's understanding. It's the kind of clarity that lets you face life head on, knowing that you've learned what you needed to learn, and now you're ready for whatever comes your way. When you're alone, you start to see the relationships in your life for what they truly are. The distractions fade, and you're no longer caught up in the noise of what others think or expect. And that's when you can see things clearly. Solitude forces you to step back and reassess who you've been surrounding yourself with. You begin to realize that not all relationships are meant to last. Not all connections are meant to nourish you. Some are simply distractions, others are drains on your energy, and some are holding you back without you even realizing it. Being alone gives you the clarity to see who truly has your back, who really wants to see you win, and who only shows up when it's convenient for them. It's hard to know who really supports you until you remove the noise and let the truth come to the surface. Relationships that are built on love, respect, and mutual understanding stand the test of time. But those that are built on convenience or dependency begin to crumble when you're no longer seeking validation from others. In solitude, you start to appreciate the people who add value to your life, who challenge you to grow, who stand beside you even when it's not easy. These are the relationships that help you evolve, that encourage you to be the best version of yourself. The others, the ones that drain you or hold you back, become more evident, and you can begin to make the hard decisions about letting go. And that's not easy, it's painful, but it's necessary for your growth. When you can stand alone and truly understand the value of genuine relationships, you start to surround yourself with the right people, those who push you, who challenge you to be better, and who walk alongside you with no strings attached. Solitude doesn't just help you clear your head, it helps you clear your life of anything that isn't serving your higher purpose. It gives you the strength to walk away from relationships that aren't aligned with your vision and to welcome the ones that truly empower you. In the end, you'll realize that being selective with your relationships isn't a form of isolation, it's a form of self-respect, a way to protect your peace and your energy for what really matters. When you're alone, you come face to face with your dreams, your ambitions, and most importantly, your fears. The fears you've been running from, the ones that have been hiding in the shadows, they all come to the surface when there's no one around to distract you. You can't outrun them anymore. But here's the thing, those fears, they're not as big as you think. They've been built up in your mind, made to feel insurmountable, but in the quiet, you start to see them for what they truly are: challenges that can be faced, conquered, and ultimately overcome. In solitude, you get the chance to dig deep into the things that scare you the most. And instead of avoiding them or pretending they don't exist, you confront them head on. You start to understand that fear isn't something to run from. It's something to learn from. Fear often points to the areas in your life where growth is needed. It shines a light on the places where you're still holding back, where you're not living up to your full potential. And that's when the real work begins. Instead of letting fear control you, solitude gives you the power to take control of it. You can now see fear for what it truly is, an opportunity to grow, to expand your limits, to step outside of your comfort zone. In those quiet moments, you learn that the path to greatness isn't without fear, but it's about moving forward in spite of it. You begin to see that fear is often a sign that you're pushing towards something bigger, something greater than you've ever imagined. The beauty of being alone is that it gives you the chance to face your fears without anyone else's opinions or expectations getting in the way. It's you versus you. You get to define how you handle your fears. You get to decide whether they'll dictate your life or whether you'll use them as stepping stones to reach your goals. And when you face those fears in the silence, when you stand in the face of them and still move forward, you build a level of confidence and courage that nothing in this world can take from you. You begin to realize that fear isn't a roadblock, it's just part of the journey, and you're stronger than you ever thought possible. When you're alone, you learn the value of peace. Not just the peace that comes from quiet surroundings, but the deep inner peace that settles into your soul when you stop running from yourself. You realize that true peace isn't about being surrounded by the right people or having everything in your life perfectly aligned. True peace comes from being content with who you are and where you are, even in the midst of chaos. Being alone forces you to face your thoughts, your feelings, and your inner world. It's easy to get caught up in the noise of life, the demands, the expectations, and the rush to keep moving forward. But solitude gives you the space to just breathe, to recalibrate, to reflect. It's in this space that you discover how much of your peace was dependent on external circumstances, on other people's approval, or on things you couldn't control. And when those things are stripped away, you learn that peace doesn't come from the outside, it's something that you cultivate from within. In those quiet moments, you begin to realize that you have the power to control your inner world. You can choose how you respond to challenges, how you react to the things that come your way. You start to understand that peace isn't about avoiding conflict or trying to control everything. It's about learning how to stay grounded no matter what's happening around you. Solitude teaches you how to find that stillness inside, that place where you're not shaken by the storms, where your soul remains calm even when life throws its hardest punches. When you make peace with yourself, when you stop seeking validation or external circumstances to determine your worth, you discover a peace that nothing in this world can disrupt. That kind of peace doesn't come overnight. It's built in the quiet moments when you choose to be still, to listen, and to let go of everything that's holding you back. And once you experience that kind of inner peace, you realize that nothing else matters. You don't need approval, you don't need external validation, and you certainly don't need anything that disturbs your peace. Because when you're at peace with yourself, you're unstoppable. Nothing can rattle you. You're centered, grounded, and ready to face whatever comes your way with a calm, unshakable strength that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for.